$1 billion disappointment. It seems so bizarre for me to say that aloud, and I'm sure it seems bizarre for you to say it too. I mean, in my real life, I don't know about you, but if I'm walking down the street and I find a quarter, I feel pretty good about my day. And don't even get me started about the time I found a $100 bill. Yeah, that was a pretty good one. Then again, I've never been out and spent $550 million on something. So when it comes to Star Wars making $1 billion, you can still be disappointing in that. The reason that I say it that way too is because the media has been coining this a $1 billion disappointment. And when we look at the numbers, I'm starting to agree. I mean, that's what we're going to do today. We're going to look at earnings. We're going to look at expenditure. We're going to look at everything about this movie, and we're going to look at previous movies, and we're going to see exactly where that term comes from. $1 billion freaking disappointment. So crazy to say out loud. Hey there. So today I want to look at the numbers behind Rise of Skywalker. And to get there, what we need to do first is examine 4 different things. Number 1, we need to talk about the production budget. And the production budget of this movie is listed at $275 million. The second thing that we need to examine with a movie like this is the advertisement budget. And considering the advertisement for this, doubling that is a safe bet. It may have actually cost even more than that. But with those 2 factors in tow already, we're talking about needing $550 million to break even. Now, the third thing that we need to note in this is that for domestic box office, you have a company that will pull about 60 to 65% of the number that we talk about. So when you look at these numbers, I mean, it's not so cut and dry as to say, hey, you got $550 million, well, you broke even. Now, we're talking international box office as the number 4 thing. You only get about 40 to 45% of that. So keep all of that stuff in mind before we begin. Now, when we're looking at these numbers, the first thing that you see is domestic box office. We're looking at $478,169,690. Now, if you look at the charting of the box office numbers, what we have now is a plateauing effect. It took a while to get there. I mean, we're talking about a Star Wars movie here, but if you look at this chart, what you have now is an effect where this is going to smooth out, and then it will carry over. It'll carry over for a little while, but earnings, they will no longer climb upward. Now they're going to plateau out, and they're going to plateau out probably pretty quickly. Now we're looking at the international numbers on that. You have $511,400,000 for a worldwide box office total of $989,569,690. Now, when we look at the international totals for this too, it's interesting to see where certain places fare. I mean, the UK actually came in big with this, with almost $69 million. Now, what's interesting too is you have a stair-stepping of sorts for a little while. A lot of movies do not actually do this. So that is a good effect for a movie. You have Germany coming in at $58 million. Japan at over $50 million, France coming in at almost $46 million, and then you have a fall off for Australia still coming in at a respectable $28 million. Then China shows in at $20 million. Now, what's interesting about that is there were prospectus talking about maybe $18 million or less for this. They've made more than that, but still, you're talking about China bringing in under $30 million. That means Star Wars there is pretty much dead. You see them almost equal with Spain. That's absolutely insane. Now, when you look at the opening numbers and everything else, this is pretty interesting too, but it gives you an idea of how many showings this has, where it's showcased at, and everything else. So hopefully you're still with me and still interested, because what we need to do now is we need to compare the other movies to this to really get a feel of how this movie is performing and why this is considered, again, what's that word? Oh yeah, $1 billion disappointment. So this first chart showcases all of the earnings for Star Wars movies, and that is pre and post Disney. Now in this, you'll first notice the excitement when it comes to Episode 7. Force Awakens ends up making $2 billion plus, and that wasn't any surprise. Everybody was pretty much pleased with a new Star Wars movie coming out, even if they weren't pleased with the end result. Episode 8, you have years, you have other movies between it. And you have this movie that, you have critics that like it, but audiences are very divided on the movie. That ends up still making $1.332 billion. But right after this, you see a movie fail. Now, currently, you see Rise of Skywalker setting at $989 million. It's going to come in under The Force Awakens. And when you're looking at the reviews and on for this, you can understand why this is still considered a disappointment. How that'll impact everything else, well, that remains to be seen. Now, the last thing that I want to look at is a 3-chart comparison examining Episode 7, Episode 8, and Episode 9 compared in the domestic box office. Now, I always think that this stuff is interesting, too, because you see the flow and you see when this thing chops out. You can see how the earnings, they pretty much, when they flatline, you have not only a slowdown, but it goes to a dead crawl. Now, you can see where this one went and also where the rangefinder went. So this performed well above expectations. Notice when you get to Episode 8, you don't have that rangefinder above expectations. It's right in the middle of it. And the numbers, when compared against them, you can see how much less that it earns domestically. Now, when you're looking at Episode 9, you'll notice when it's flatlining, it will probably perform right in the middle again. So you're going to have median expectations, and this number is going to be woefully low compared to Episode 8 and especially to Episode 7. So we're talking about disappointment there. Oh yeah, this thing definitely is what they just said. $1 billion disappointment, and that's a mess. So anyway, you tell me what you think. Now, to end this, I want to say thank you for showing up. Thank you for participating. You make this stuff possible. If you'd like to help out the channel, consider subscribing to it, consider sharing videos, and consider interacting with them. You sharing your time with this, though, is important. I won't take up any more of it except to say thank you. I appreciate you, and we'll do this again soon. Thanks.